Howell's Columbia Gorge Chronicles presents Multnomah Falls Lodge, the Railroad and the City of Portland. Multnomah Falls has attracted the attention of visitors and locals from all over the world. The stunning beauty of the falls has drawn people there by boat, rail, cars, and airplanes. It is the most visited scenic spot in Oregon. Visitors require robust resources. The railroad established the site as a depot, but it was a whistle stop, not a destination. When the historic Columbia River Highway was built, Multnomah Falls became a destination for Portlanders by automobile. This is the story of the railroad establishing visitor resources at Multnomah Falls and then passing on the responsibility to the city of Portland. Let's celebrate the 100th year of Multnomah Falls Lodge. This is the north elevation of Multnomah Falls Lodge. As you can see, there's a banner hanging up there on that railing, and it's the 100th anniversary. It's 2025. So Multnomah Lodge has been here for 100 years. This map was made by Robert Valentine Short in 1860. It established a division of the land surrounding Multnomah Falls into 4 lots. Multnomah Creek is on the left side of the map and is labeled Coon Creek. Federal law allowed railroads to submit plats showing 20 acres that they intended to use as depot land. This is the map submitted by the Oregon Railroad and Navigation Company for a railroad depot at Multnomah Falls in 1884. Hans Thielsen, as the chief engineer of the Oregon Railway and Navigation Company, swore that this map was surveyed by him under his supervision, and it was made to select ground for station buildings, depots, machine shops, side tracks, turnouts, and water stations under the Act of Congress approved March 3, 1875. This is a modern map showing lots 1, 2, 3, and 4, and how the railroad's 20 acres is situated on the landscape. Lots 1 through 3 are yellow, lot 4 is red, and the railroad land is green. Notice a rectangle indicating the placement of Multnomah Falls Lodge. Martin V. Donnelly, the bridge engineer for the Oregon Railway and Navigation Company, completed an as-built of the bridges and buildings along the railroad along the Oregon side of the gorge. These are on lengthy rolls of paper to scale and are kept at the Oregon Historical Society in manuscript 1664. This shows the railroad bridge and office at milepost 32. This is a detail of the railroad office at Multnomah Falls. This is a photograph of the railroad office at Multnomah Falls. The log footbridge spanning the gap above the lower falls may have been built by the railroad. This is an article that appeared in the Dalles Chronicle in 1895. The highlighted area says, in the days of Henry Villiard, it was intended to make of Multnomah Falls a summer resort and build a large hotel, but with the collapse of his fortune, the scheme was dropped. This is a postcard of the east end of a log passenger shelter at Multnomah Falls. There's no Benson Bridge, so this was taken prior to the construction of the historic Columbia River Highway. But notice the power lines, which place it about circa 1905. The caption says, Multnomah Falls, height 840 feet, on the Columbia River, Portland, the Oregon Railway and Navigation Railway. This is a view of the whole rustic log passenger structure. There are 4 people and a dog sitting on the edge of the platform. There are 4 supporting posts on each side. It looks like the posts were cut so the branches on the original tree could be used for diagonal support. This is a unique design. The next 2 images were taken in 1915 and are before and after images of the landscape north of Multnomah Falls. This is a view from the west viaduct of the historic Columbia River Highway construction camp at Multnomah Falls. On the south side of the highway right-of-way are some tents. Note the train activity past the east viaduct and the train car on the siding in the left foreground. Also notice the tall deciduous trees, which are probably cottonwoods. Please note that there is no railroad shed on this property. This is a later view from the west viaduct, and the highway construction camp is gone. Note that the railroad passenger shed is just north of the historic Columbia River Highway. Notice the tall deciduous trees are no longer there. The railroad established a shed where railroad passengers could wait for the train. This is a postcard showing the historic Columbia River Highway bridge over Multnomah Creek, the Hazelwood restaurant south of the historic Columbia River Highway, and the passenger railroad shed north of the historic Columbia River Highway. This railroad shed was built in 1915. The Larch Mountain Trail was also built in 1915. Hikers took the train to Multnomah Falls, climbed to the summit of Larch Mountain, and returned to Multnomah Falls and waited for the train in this passenger shed so they could return to Portland. On December 19, 1915, the Mazamas made their second annual winter ascent of Larch Mountain. They left Union Station at midnight on Saturday. 2 special cars were added to the train to accommodate the party. Immediately after they got to Multnomah Falls, they began hiking. There were 126 people in the party. They climbed the trail in the moonlight. By 6:30 a.m., every single person was on top of Larch Mountain. They returned to Multnomah Falls promptly so they could catch the 5:30 train back to Portland. In the following years, a railroad shed was used by the Mazamas and other hikers to wait for the train back to Portland. This shows 5 motorcycles and their riders parked just south of the railroad shed. There are 2 riders for each motorcycle. 2 of the motorcycles are Baton's and 2 are Excelsiors by Schwinn, and I haven't identified the 5th bike. The date on the license plate is 1914. In 1916, the Cream Store opened a small restaurant at Multnomah Falls. It served ice cream and pop and cigars, and it sold postcards. These are images of that facility. John B. Yeon was the Multnomah County Roadmaster of the historic Columbia River Highway. He did not collect a salary for working as the roadmaster. He made his riches as a lumber baron. He was fiercely independent. It was his way for the highway or no way. Don't ask permission. On 12 June 1918, John Yeon proposed to the Board of County Commissioners that the county should build a comfort station at Multnomah Falls. The Hazelwood concession wasn't furnishing restrooms or drinking water. There was a tremendous demand for facilities at the falls. Yeon recommended that A.E. Doyle should be hired to design the facilities. On June 17th, the commissioners approved Yeon's plan and instructed him to hire Doyle to draw sketches of a building. On August 1, Yeon informed the commissioners that Doyle had finished the plan and the county should have a contractor immediately. County officials didn't buy the land, so they couldn't carry out Yeon's plan. Soon after Yeon's effort to provide comforts at Multnomah Falls, the railroad fulfilled the needs. This is the brief of the agreement between the Oregon-Washington Railroad and Navigation Company and the Cream Store to establish the Hazelwood at Multnomah Falls. They entered into a 5-year lease from July 1st, 1919 to June 30th, 1924. The rent was $10 per month. The railroad required the leasee to build a comfort station and spend no less than $2,000. The building needed to be occupied from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. The Hazelwood was required to provide to patrons of the railroad wholesome drinking water without charge. It will always keep the building sanitary, and it will provide garbage cans for the deposit of paper, debris, refuse, and rubbish, and that it will gather up and burn any and all such rubbish. It will provide and maintain picnic tables for the use of the railroad company's passengers, patrons, and others. The station grounds shall at all times be clean and attractive. It will use every reasonable means to protect and preserve the shrubbery and trees naturally growing upon the premises or which may be placed on the grounds. The lessee shall keep and maintain said comfort station in a clean and sanitary condition. During freezing weather, the store will supply the comfort station the necessary care and protection to prevent damage to the toilet facilities, especially the bursting of pipes. And should any toilets become damaged either from freezing or otherwise, it will immediately repair or replace them. This is a menu for the Hazelwood. It shows 3 locations. One was the Hazelwood at 388 through 390 on Washington Street. The other was the Multnomah Hazelwood at Multnomah Falls. And the third was the Broadway Hazelwood at 127 Broadway. After the Hazelwood entered into this lease, they expanded their facilities and to accommodate them for restrooms. This is a Columbia Stages limousine parked in front of the Hazelwood. Multnomah Falls is in the background. And the first 2 passenger doors are labeled ladies, and the last passenger door is labeled smokers. Smoking cigars was actually kind of a big thing out at the Hazelwood back in those days. This is the Hazelwood buried under snow. And as you may recall from the lease, they were required to make sure that the pipes didn't burst and that the comfort stations were still available when people would come out to the Hazelwood. On April 3rd, 1922, the railroad donated the land at Multnomah Falls to the city of Portland. This is the deed between Oregon-Washington Railroad and Navigation Company to the city. The deed transmitted 15.62 acres to the city. The deed was about 4.4 acres less than the 20 acres the railroad had claimed because the railroad retained its right-of-way and the right-of-way of the historic Columbia River Highway. There were provisions in the deed to care for the site and to build a building for the administration of the site. The city agreed to the following. The premises shall be forever used and maintained by the grantee and its successors as a park for the public. It should be kept in a neat and orderly condition and free from litter and debris. The natural beauty of the property shall not be destroyed, nor the trees or shrubbery cut or removed, except to the extent necessary to conform to park development as the city may authorize. No advertisement shall be placed upon the property, nor any signs or notices, except may be necessary to conduct the property for park purposes. Nor shall any building or structure be placed upon the property, except as may be necessary or convenient in the conduct and administration of the property as a public park. All buildings or structures shall be designed and located so they not substantially interfere with or obstruct the view of Multnomah Falls, as it can be seen from the highway and the railroad. The grantee will not permit the use of displays, entertainments, amusements, or exhibits for the purpose of gain. On or before July 31st, 1925, the grantee shall erect upon the above described premises at a location and of a design consistent with the foregoing, a building for the administration of said park, and for the use, comfort, and convenience of the public, at a reasonable cost of not less than $12,500, and shall thereafter maintain the same in good repair. This is a modern map showing lots 1, 2, 3, and 4 of Township 1 North, Range 6 East, Section 7, and how the railroad's 20 acres is situated on the landscape. Lots 1 through 3 are yellow, Lot 4 is red, and the railroad land is green. Notice the rectangle indicating the placement of Multnomah Falls Lodge. The architect that was hired to design the Multnomah Falls Lodge was Albert E. Doyle. He had designed many buildings in the city of Portland. He had designed the Multnomah County Library, the U.S. Bank Building, some major projects. So to take on Multnomah Falls Lodge was a pretty major contract, but it was remote because it was going to be very difficult to build a lodge out in the Columbia Gorge, especially since they were going to be starting it in the wintertime. On August 10, 1924, the Oregonian published a statement by William C. North, manager of the Morgan Building, about the undue tax burden of Multnomah Falls Lodge on the taxpayers of Portland. Mr. North had learned that the city planned to spend $40,000 to make improvements to Benson Park. He wanted to know the ultimate cost of developing Benson Park. He wanted to know if we shall have an experience similar to the one at Crown Point, which increased with rapid strides from a promised private subscription of $18,000 to a direct tax burden of over $100,000. The bids on the lodge started at $24,000. This did not include a heating system or a water supply system or to provide furnishings for the public. Upkeep and landscaping were also not included. Mr. North also wanted to know why we were spending money on parks outside of city limits. He wanted Commissioner Peer and Superintendent Kaiser to take the public into their confidence and outline their complete program of park improvements. Mr. North argued that the city had proposed that they spend $12,500 at Multnomah Falls and $10,000 at Waukena in 1924. This totaled $22,500, and since nothing had been spent at Waukena, Mr. North wanted to know how the city would make up the $18,000 difference. Would they abandon plans to build a new bridge on Terwilliger? The public is entitled to know the park plans of the city of Portland. He thought the city should develop parks within the city limits so people wouldn't have to drive 33 miles to enjoy this public benefit. C.P. Kaiser, the park superintendent, responded. He said that the Multnomah Falls Lodge would be self-supporting. The $40,000 appropriated for 1924 would be the total expenditure for Benson Park. Kaiser reminded Mr. North that the deed from the railroad required the city to spend at least $12,000 on a community building. Kaiser said the building was designed to make it worthy of the site and to warrant the expense in view of the return. It is our belief that the building will prove to be a financial and artistic asset to the city, and that it will prove of incalculable utility. It will be there for the citizens of Portland as well as tourists. Tourists will tell their friends of the wonders along the Columbia River Highway. $40,000 will cover the improvements at Multnomah Falls. Improvements at Waukena and other points will occur when funding permits. On August 13, 1924, the city purchasing agent recommended that the Whaley Shattuck Construction Company should build Multnomah Falls Lodge. They bid $26,434 plus $1,500 for a rebel stone wall, totaling $27,934. City Council accepted this recommendation. They required a bond worth $27,934. George H. Whaley and Ralph C. Shattuck were the principals of the Whaley Shattuck Construction Company. They had an office at 627 Henry Building in Portland. They came from Baker, Oregon. They built homes and public buildings, the high school in Wallala, a new high school in Dallas, Odell Grade School, and the Sunnyside School in Portland. Dole, the architect, required that the lodge be built from native stone. The stone for building the lodge was supposed to come from excavating for the lodge. On January 17, 1925, the builders reported that there wasn't enough stone from excavating to build the lodge. Since there wasn't enough stone on the site, they needed to haul stone from another location, so they needed to hire someone to haul the stone. They also needed to hire a stonemason. The heating system was installed by Rushlight, Hasfor, and Lord, and it was approved by the City Council on January 15, 1925. Alan G. Rushlight had been the mayor of the city of Portland from 1911 to 1913, and he was serving on the Oregon legislature in 1925 through 1929. The only lodge construction photograph that I'm aware of appeared in the Oregon Journal May 3, 1925. It shows the first floor stonework completed, the second floor framing under construction. Please note that there appears to be the Hazelwood off to the left or to the east, and then there's also other buildings in the background. We do know that the workers moved the Hazelwood out of the way, and given the poor condition of the building, it could very well be the Hazelwood after it was moved. The public and city officials were eager to open the lodge. Many people thought the building would be ready to open by July 1st. This included S.S. Peer, the Commissioner of Finance for the City of Portland. The date for the formal opening had not been established. It was hoped within a few weeks. But there was one problem. Henry Thiele had won the bid for the concession at the lodge, but he backed out of the agreement because he couldn't afford the bond. They needed to find a new concessionaire, and that would take time to advertise, accept bids, and then time for the new concessionaire to ramp up the concession. I believe this photograph was the first of the completed lodge to appear in a newspaper. This photo appeared in the Oregonian on Sunday, September 20th, 1925. The header says, City's Lodge on Highway Finished. The caption for this photo says, Building of native stone, which was designed to meet particular needs at location below falls and which cost the city $40,000, is in use at Multnomah Falls. The next three photos were gathered together with the last photo in one folder in the Oregonian collection at the Oregon Historical Society. I presume that all four of these photos were taken at the same time and show the lodge prior to September 1925. Again, the public and city officials were eager for the lodge to open. This article claims that there would be a ceremony on Friday, October 9th, 1925. There is no evidence that this ever happened. According to construction reports filed by Dole, the lodge had some problems, like a leaky roof, and these had to be rectified before it could be occupied. The first evidence that the lodge was ready to use is in this ad placed by Simmons by the Falls in the Oregon Journal on April 18, 1926. They are ready to serve lunches, dinners, and provide fountain service. Another problem that they had at the lodge was that they didn't have any electricity. They had to have a generator installed, and it was installed by Helt and O'Donnell. They didn't really get any electricity until about 1930. This is the west end of Multnomah Falls Lodge, and the lower window used to be the original gift shop. And they actually had the window opened up so that people could come up to the window and get stuff, purchase film for their cameras and picture postcards if they didn't have a camera. And so this was the original West End in 1925. This color postcard has the inscription, Columbia River Highway, Oregon, erected 1925. There's no temporary canopied booth, and there's no signs above the doors. This is a photograph prior to 1929. We can tell this because there's no extension to the lodge, which happened in 1929. Most managers try to find ways to maximize the use of the square footage. The flat area to the east of the lodge was wasted space. More stuff could be sold if they utilized the excess square footage. A temporary canopied booth was set up east of the lodge. This is the north elevation of Multnomah Falls Lodge prior to 1929. On the east door, it is labeled Fountain. On the middle door, it is labeled Simmons Sandwich Shop. The west door is labeled Candies. The arched entrance to the second floor is labeled Simmons by the Falls Restaurant Confectionery. Here's a snapshot of the lodge prior to 1929. A man and a boy, each holding a cat, standing northeast of Multnomah Falls Lodge prior to 1929. You can see the canopied booth to the east of the lodge, and notice that the rocks are defining parking. This is Multnomah Falls Lodge. It was built in 1925 by the city of Portland. They contracted with the Whaley Shattuck Company to build the lodge. The architect was Albert E. Doyle, who was a famous architect in Portland. He built a lot of really important buildings in Portland. And I want to go now over to the spot on the lodge. The part here on the right was built in 1925, but they decided they needed more buildings. So in 1929, they made an extension. And the extension was started right about here. This right at the end of this, right at the end of this balcony. So everything to the east of here was added in 1929, and it was added by the contractor was Frank L. Mullen and Sons, and they had the contract. And then there was different architects for this portion of the lodge. This is an aerial view of the Multnomah Falls site. The extension to the lodge has happened, so this photograph was taken after 1929. Please notice that there's snow, and that the snow helps define the landscape, and you can see the Larch Mountain Trail switchbacking up the mountainside. Here are a couple of views after the extension has been added to the lodge in 1929. Please notice how much the lodge has been enlarged. The following description of the lodge interior was published in 1927. The lobby is simply done with plenty of space for circulation and is furnished with stout pieces designed to appeal to the mountain climber in high boots and flannel shirt, as well as to the passing motorist. A large stone fireplace dominates the east wall, and on the north side are glass doors opening onto a balcony, which offers an uninterrupted view of the Columbia River and the distant mountains in the state of Washington. The furniture in this photo is congruent with this description. We can imagine a mountain climber in his flannel shirt, sitting in a log rocking chair, or playing a game of cards at a table with log legs. A Kaiser hand-colored photograph of Multnomah Falls hangs above the large stone fireplace. Tall Kaiser photos flank both sides of the room. There's a framed mountain painting or photo in the northeast corner of the room. They supplemented heat from the fireplace with a steam heat radiator on the right side of the room. This is an early photo of the Wakina room, and it shows heavy beams supporting the floor above. And then there's a horizontal photo above the door. There's a vertical photo to the right with light photo fixtures on both sides. And then notice that the wooden furniture is finished. It's not made from logs. And then also there's steam heat on the right side of the room. This is an early photo of the curio shop in Multnomah Falls Lodge. Notice the banners hanging point downwards 2/3 of the way back. There are glass cases. There are photos displayed on the right, and there's blankets against the back wall. This is a postcard of the north elevation of Multnomah Falls Lodge. You can see that the 1929 edition has been added. The caption says, Simmons by the Falls, Multnomah Falls, Columbia River Highway, Oregon. One car is heading west, 3 cars parked in front of the lodge. And notice the lamps on the poles. They've tried to replicate those for the modern decorations on the site. This is a snapshot of 7 people eating ice cream in front of Multnomah Falls Lodge. People sitting at the tables on the open porch above, and then the fountain neon sign is behind them. This is a snapshot of the east end of Multnomah Falls after the 1929 extension. Please notice the light pole with the globe on top. Again, that was something that they've tried to capture at the site. Here's another photo of a woman who's got an ice cream cone and she's clutching her purse and enjoying it at Multnomah Falls Lodge. Here is another postcard, actually, of Multnomah Falls Lodge. It shows a light pole with a globe on it. This is probably in the 1930s. This is another snapshot from the 1930s of Multnomah Falls Lodge. And again, notice that there's a light pole with a globe on top. Again, that was a very distinctive feature of the site. Multnomah Falls Lodge and other parkland acquired by the city of Portland was done during good economic times from 1915 to 1930. The Great Depression and World War II made the ownership and maintenance of Benson Park and Multnomah Falls by the city of Portland unsustainable. On July 26, 1939, the Portland City Council passed Ordinance Number 72666, transferring ownership of the lodge to the Forest Service. The ordinance stated that the city could no longer fund maintenance on the lodge and its grounds. The city split Benson Park between the Forest Service and Oregon State Parks. They restricted the use of the land for park and recreational purposes only. Simmons continued to operate a concession at the lodge until it was closed due to World War II in November 1942. During World War II, no one owned the concession. The lodge remained closed until 1946. The next video of Hal's Columbia Gorge Chronicles will describe the changes made to the lodge after the Forest Service took possession. That will be followed by a history of the concessions that operated at Multnomah Falls Lodge from 1926 until 2025. See you next time.